Welcome everybody to our Marinas and Yacht Club Spill Response Communication workshop. My name is Vivian Matuk. I'm the Environmental Boating Program Manager for both the California State Parks and the California Coastal Commission. And I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves. So Andrea, would you like to start first and then take it from there? You're muted.
Good morning. My name is Andrea Moore. I'm with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's Office of Spill Prevention and Response, and I am one of the local government grants coordinators, along with Cindy Murphy, who is with us this morning. She's also our tribal liaison, and with us this morning we have John Amos, who's one of our Northern Inland Wildlife Officers, and he will be presenting for you today. And we also have Thomas Delano, who's one of our Central Oil Spill Prevention Specialists. And Vivian, did you want them to introduce themselves as well, or?
Yeah, I think that would be great if they have the opportunity so people recognize them. So go ahead.
John?
Hello, Officer John Amos. Can you see me popping up on there? Yeah, okay. Wildlife Officer John Amos. I cover the northern inland part of the state for OSPR. That basically includes from Butte County to the state line. So everything that isn't in the marine area is kind of my area of response. I'll be providing the OSPR introduction here in a few minutes.
Fantastic. So Thomas?
Yeah.
Thomas, you are muted.
Okay, here we go. You guys got me?
We can.
Okay, hi. My name is Thomas Delano. I am the Oil Spill Prevention Specialist for the Department of Fish and Wildlife, OSPR, here in Central California. My office is out of Santa Barbara. So I mainly cover the coastline from just above Malibu, like Port Hueneme, all the way up to Monterey.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So couple of things. I know you are all probably experts in virtual meetings, but some of you are not, and I want to embrace everybody's knowledge. So a couple of recommendations for you to have a pleasant experience today. I want to encourage everybody to turn on your camera if it's possible, just to make it more personable. However, I understand sometimes internet is pretty bad if you turn on your camera or your computer doesn't have a camera built in, so no worries about that. You can turn on your camera by making sure that the icon for the camera doesn't have the red line on top of that. I'm going to make sure that everybody is muted, not because I don't want to hear your beautiful voices, but this system tends to create a lot of background noise. So that's why I'm muting you all. You can unmute yourself by simply clicking on top of the microphone icon, or if you're dialing in, you can just press Control-6 to unmute and *6 also to mute yourself. We have devoted an area in the agenda to ask questions. So please only ask questions when we ask you to do that. Why is that? It's because sometimes you guys are very engaged into the presentation and you have a question that is going to be covered in the next minute or the next slide. So that will allow the smooth flow of the workshop. And also I would encourage everybody to refrain from using the chat as during the presentation, because sometimes it creates like, okay, somebody asking a question, or unless it's something that is critical, we will take questions during the question and answer section. You can unmute yourself, you can use the chat, or you can also use, depending on the Zoom version you have, you can use the reaction tool and raise your hand, and we will take it from there to respond to your question. we're going to review the handouts. Again, in the chat, I have included a couple of times already, and I'm including again the access to the handouts. You should have received already 3 times the handouts as attachments. If not, because I know some people registered this morning, but I send you the email, please access the all the handouts with the exception of the agenda in that link where you can have access to all of them. Basically, it's a PDF version of different components. The first one is our spill response communication toolkit. You also have a PDF where we have the California Hazardous Materials Spill Release Notification guidance. Then you have another handout about recommended resources for oil spill cleanup or spill kits for marinas and yacht clubs. And then we have the frequently asked questions for the Office of Spill Prevention and Response. We're going to call them OSPR, Spill Response Grants. And that's pretty much in terms of the handouts. So getting to know you. So you know who's here today, because the group is pretty big. We have 42 plus, because we have a bunch of people who are in one computer. So right now we have approximately like 55 people based on my count. What I did was I decided to create this map for all of you to show you how beautiful representation we have today from all over California. We have people from Alameda, Contra Costa, El Dorado, Fresno, Humboldt, LA, Orange, Riverside, Sacramento, San Bernardino, San Diego, San Francisco, San Joaquin, San Luis Obispo, San Mateo, Santa Barbara, Solano, Stanislaus, Ventura, Trinity, Butte, Lake County, and hey, we have a person who's joining us from our beautiful Nevada state, from Clark County. And we have people from different backgrounds, not only marinas, ports, harbors. We also have a Marine Patrol, Coast Guard Auxiliary, nonprofits, in addition to, of course, a yacht club. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Let's quickly review the agenda. Again, I was included as an attachment in the email that I sent 3 times this week. First of all, after the introductions, which is this part that I'm just wrapping up, we're going to switch gears, and I'm going to allow our colleague, John Amis, Wildlife Officer with the Office of Spill Prevention and Response, to start from a bird's eye view perspective about the California oil spill response structure. Then we're going to have questions. Then we're going to look or review the spill response communication toolkit. Again, part of your handouts. Then we're going to have questions. Then we're going to go for a 10-minute break, come back and talk about case studies and lessons learned. That particular presentation is going to be guided by our colleague, Thomas Delano. Then we're going to have questions, come back, and then Andrea is going to talk about the oil spill response grant and resources. Then we have questions, and then we will wrap it up, open the floor for additional comments, and then we will be sending you the evaluation form electronically, as well as, again, the handouts and bunch of other resources for you that we'll be sharing with you today. So really quickly, based on the information you receive via the flyer, the social media post, or the email that call your attention to register for this workshop, and as we clearly stated there, just to be transparent and you know what you're getting today, we're going to cover the California oil spill response structure, the toolkit, some of the case studies, and also the grants, as I review with you just a couple of seconds again, based on the agenda. And the goal of this workshop was to take you out of your routine and invite you to come to this workshop to refresh your memory or to gain information about spill response protocols, as well as emergency response protocols. In addition to that, we wanted to remind you how important it is to always be prepared to be on the proactive side, because we have to remember that prevention is the cheapest way to control pollution. And it is also important to remember that emergencies are best handled by a teamwork. With the information we're going to be covering today, we want you to go back to your facility and share this information with your staff. Make sure that you're refreshing your guidelines, your protocols, so your operation will be much better. We don't want you to, unfortunately, face an emergency and enter into a panic mode without knowing what to do, but this is the point. Like, take your time, use your staff meetings to try to review some of the materials we're going to be sharing with you today. In addition, these workshops have been designed to bring experts to you so you can ask any questions. And I want to highlight this many, many times. We all want you to ask questions and never feel intimidated by the rest of the team. Nobody's going to judge you. This is an educational workshop, and we want you to have the opportunity to ask questions and then use us as resources in case you have follow-up questions, and then go back to your facility and improve your protocols and your guidelines. That's one of the most important educational goals we have for today. So I'm going to start this presentation right now. Let me see if I can just quickly find my polls here. Let me see. Okay, here, polls. So I'm going to start with some polling. I know a lot of you are sharing computers, so it's okay for you to work as a team and respond to the question. So I'm going to launch the first question of the poll that you should be seeing right now. And Andrea, can you give me a thumbs up to see if the team is seeing? Perfect. So go ahead, be sincere, be sincere. The important here, it's anonymous, so we're not going to know who's responding, but be sincere. Take your time. We're going to give you 1 minute, and I want full participation. I know we have 46 participants that are individual, but I know you have a team, and go ahead and respond to this question. Do you know who is your county office of emergency services? Don't worry, be sincere. One of the goals today is that you leave this workshop knowing how to respond to all of these questions. So we have 15 more minutes, and then I'll end the poll and share the resources. All right, I have 6 more seconds. I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share the resources. Andrea, can you give me a thumbs up if people are seeing the results? Thank you. So look at this, 62% don't have a clue who your county office of emergency services people or contact is, and 38 knows. So that's great. Thank you so much for all of you who participated. Now let's go to question number 2. So let me go to question number 2. Again, I want full participation. We have created these workshops to make it super interactive. So the second question reads, does your facility have a spill plan in place? So no, my facility doesn't have one. Yes, I don't have any clue. So again, please be sincere. That's why we are here. Education doesn't hurt. We're here just to improve protocols and guidelines. And we have 10 more seconds to share the results. I see that we have a bunch of participation, but I want everybody to have the opportunity. Okay, so it seems that we're getting more responses. Excellent. All right, so I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share the results here. So we have that 11% says no, 66% says yes, and 23%, hey, I don't know. Okay, fantastic. Let me stop sharing the screen here, and we're going to go to question 3. Be ready, and here we go. So question 3 reads, do you know what your neighboring marinas and yacht clubs have in terms of a spill response equipment? Please go ahead and feel free to respond. and let us know what you guys see. Regina, you should be seeing the question right now. Please let me know. We have 30 more seconds for you to respond. Again, being clear and transparent is the way to go. So that's great. Okay, perfect. So probably you were having some issues with your computer, so that's good. All right, so we got 85% participation. So let me end the poll and share the results with you. So 81% of you don't have any clue what my neighboring marinas and yacht clubs have in terms of oil spill response, and no worries. We're going to tell you today why it is important, and we want you to do that as part of the homework you're going to have after this workshop today. So that's great. Fantastic. And let's go to the fourth question of this poll. Right now, you should be seeing question 4, which reads, how do you report an oil spill at your facility? I don't know. I don't report, but I make sure it is prevented in the future. To be honest, I don't know. Hey, I reported to both the National Response Center and the State Warning Center. Please make sure that you give us your true response here. And let's see what people are responding. We have 20 more seconds for you to participate. So please go ahead and respond. I know probably you're having internal communication there with the rest of the team if you're sharing your computer. So thank you for doing that. All right. Fantastic. Excellent. So let me end the poll and share the results for this question. And as you can see, 66% selected both National Response Center and the State Warning Center. 32% said, to be honest, I don't know, no worries. That's why we're here today. And 3%, hey, I don't report it, but I make sure that doesn't happen. Fantastic. And let's go back to the last question. And here we go. Have you heard about the Office of Spill Prevention Response Equipment Grants? Again, be honest. One of the responses is, oops, nope, I don't have any idea. The other one is, oh, yes. All right. So I think Andrea is going to have a fantastic job today educating all these great participants about an amazing program for these grants that the state and of course OSPR has for the marinas and the harbors. Okay, let's stop here. We have 85 participants. Okay. And let me share the results with all of you here. So we have 80% of all of you don't have any clue. Fantastic. Andrea is going to have fun sharing with all of you that information. And 20% says yes. All right. So why did we do that? Because we wanted just to make sure that we know before you get exposed to all this information, what you know or don't know, which is going to be presented today as part of this workshop today. So thank you for all of you who participated, and you're going to be learning all those responses during this workshop today. So let me give you a little bit of background in terms of this effort that the agencies that I represent in partnership with the Office of Spill Prevention and Response we have been doing. It turns out that as a result of large-scale oil spill incidents that have happened across the state, efforts have been made to increase communication between state, federal, local agencies, as well as boating facilities across the state. We created the Marinas and Yacht Club Spill Response Communication Working Group several years ago. And as you can see, as part of this working group, we have a great representation, not only from state and federal agencies, also local counties, but also representation from private public marinas as well as yacht clubs who came together and worked with us in different capacities to be able to create different outcomes to help to increase communication capabilities with boating facilities in case of an oil spill. So as you see here, everybody was very well represented. One of the outcomes that we produced as part of this working group was the Marina San Jacob Spill Response Communication Packet that you guys are going to be reviewing with all of us today, that you have access via the handouts. That packet was guided by the marina industry representatives, private, public marinas, as well as yacht clubs and also boaters. They told us what information we needed to include in this packet, which has a lot of information to be able to tackle spills in case that they happen outside of your facility, like big spills, or inside of your facility. That's why we're going to be talking today. And we decided, hey, we need to put together educational workshops in order to disseminate this information, but also bring experts. So boating facilities have the opportunity, or interested parties, of asking questions. So for the last 8 years or so, we have been putting together 22 workshops with over 500 participants. And since last year, we launched version 2 of the workshops based on feedback that we received from all of you in terms of what other material we need to cover. And that's why we're emphasizing today the case studies. That was what you recommended, and that's why I wanted to highlight the importance of all of you to please fill out the evaluation form this afternoon when we send it to you via email, because we want to continue to improve these workshops. All right, so that covers a little bit of the introduction. Now Vivian is going to be quiet, and I'm going to introduce now my colleague, John Amis. He's with the Office of Spill Prevention and Response, who's going to start from a bird's eye view perspective about the California oil spill response structure. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, be quiet, and then invite John to join us.
Okay. All right. And you all see my screen there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Okay, so here's kind of the introduction. So the OSPR begins, at the state level with the governor appointing the administrator, and then we fall within the Natural Resources Agency, which also includes departments like CAL FIRE, DWR, and state parks and rec. And then, as we narrow it down to California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and then out of that department comes OSPR. Our mission, our mission is to provide best achievable protection of California's natural resources by preventing, preparing for, and responding to spills of oil and restoring affected resources. That really is the nuts and bolts of OSPR. And if you really need to know what we're about, it's there in our mission. Great. So how we got? Oh, sorry, I'm trying to getting ahead of my house. So there were some major incidents that had occurred, which had started the idea of OSPR. Beginning way back in 1969. A oil spill, a release of 4 million gallons out of Santa Barbara. And then we got into the Exxon Valdez incident. I think a lot of us were around to see that devastation and that cleanup process, and how disjointed that incident response was. And I think, the nation knew that we needed to do better, in California specifically. Right, and then locally thereafter, 1989, the spill had occurred in the Huntington Beach area, and then soon after that, OSPR was created in 1999 with the Lempert Keene Sea Strand I'm sorry, I need to minimize something here. Seastrand Petroleum Marine Waters Act. And so early in the beginning of OSPR, we were all, strictly marine area. And then later on in 2014, the inland OSPR positions were created. We have found that the majority of OSPR responses, still occur in the marine areas, but, in the expansion, now we're doing, everything from, lakes, streams, creeks, like storm drains, all of those surface water, resources that we see on a day in, day out basis. And I wanted to mention as well, in my introduction, I had stated that I was the Northern Inland OSPR warden, but all of us OSPR wardens are, cross-trained from inland to marine. So we, as the wildlife officer or warden, we all work on-call shifts, and those on-call shifts, are, can be anywhere throughout our area of the state. For the northern field response team, right, the northern part of the state, if you're on call, you'll take calls from the inland side and the marine side. So, we all of us wildlife officers and field response teams can respond to northern or to inland and marine environment spills. And then in 2021, we had taken on also renewable fuels as part of our jurisdiction in response, things like biodiesel, which we have all heard of. The biodiesel for a while was, before 2021, was kind of in a gray area to where not everybody knew who was going to cover that, because in some situations, OSPR, we deal specifically with petroleum spills and other types of spills, whether it be, sewage or vegetable oil, that might be something that goes straight to a district game warden or district wildlife officer. So OSPR being petroleum and surface waters jurisdiction primarily. Not that we can't cover other incidents as well, but that's our primary jurisdiction. Right, and so our jurisdiction, covers, waters of the state, and that is basically any water, for us in our jurisdiction, any water you can see, anything, whether it be in the ocean, whether it be in the creeks, or whether it be flowing, it doesn't matter what sort of transportation. It could be a rail line, it could be a tanker truck, it could be pipeline, it could be personal vehicles that have crashed and released small, a smaller amount of product into a storm drain. It could be, recreational boats that sink, and we deal with that, which you in Marine all kind of know and have dealt with in the past. So, and on as far as scale, it doesn't really matter on our end, how large or small that the release is, but OSPR's jurisdiction is pretty simple. Petroleum products threatening to impact surface waters or impacting surface waters directly. And so, OSPR, as a lead response agency for the state, we take on a role as the, as a state on-scene coordinator. And our position within the state is simply that we follow through with our jurisdiction and, respond to oil impacts in state waters. So, uh-oh. So, so our positions, right? Where we fall is, you know, generally the response. You know, we get called. It's a notification through Cal OES generally, and you know, if it meets our jurisdiction, the petroleum products in state waters, that means you're likely going to get a call or a follow up or uh, a physical response, meaning that somebody from the field response team will be making their way out to the site to assess the incident and to help start coordinating efforts in the response. Now, and in my position in incident command as SOSC, that means there's basically one commander for the state, one voice for the state within the unified command. And that is, you know, what we call the state on scene coordinator. And you'll have a state on scene coordinator, you know, in a larger incidents, there will also be a federal on scene coordinator. You'll have the responsible party incident coordinator, and you know, potentially a local government on scene coordinator. And so in those positions, you know, in the UC, we make all the decisions, final decisions anyways, for the response and the post-incident you know, actions as well. And so not only will we bring the state on scene coordinator who will focus on the cleanup and up into the restoration part of the response, you'll also, you know, have a potentially wildlife officers that will come out and do investigation as well. It could be, you know, for criminal reasons. It could also be for civil reasons. You know, more often than not, there aren't cases filed with district attorneys or civil litigation that goes forward for those incidents in which you know, small scale incidents which are reasonably responded to by the responsible party. You know, generally, if there is a large scale incident and there have been impacts to the resources, there is more often than not some civil litigation that will take place, but the criminal investigation may not. You know, those times in which criminal investigation is warranted is when there's some sort of intent or negligence or failure to act. You know, for those who are responsible for releases, you know, it is within the California Department of Fish and Game code that you respond reasonably. And, you know, no response generally does not equate to a reasonable response. And, you know, and so in OSPR, right, there's several different facets of OSPR. You know, as Vivian had mentioned before, we have the prevention aspect, you know, to where we are doing, where OSPSs will come out and monitor and look for specific instances to, you know, to prevent, you know, spillage. You know, on the preparedness side, you know, we do drills and exercises commonly to, you know, to allow, you know, owners and operators to go through a system of, you know, trying to figure out how you would respond, or, you know, not only have you assign positions, but let's practice people in those positions, and let's take on what is seeming to be a real response. And I have found that those drills and exercises, even though they sometimes can be, you know, time consuming, they do become very relevant and useful when, you know, that rare occurrence takes place and everybody does need to respond. And it's much better for us to have people aware of the position they would be in a response, and the roles they need to take on before they, you know, are actually in that role. And then on the, you know, for the response side, right, we, you know, and if once an incident occurs and, you know, and OSPR receives notification from Cal OES, you know, there is likely going to be a response by somebody in the field response team, if not the entire field response team. You know, and that response team will come out and start to evaluate everything from, you know, what we need to do to contain what has been released, what we need to do to make sure and identify the source and control the source. And generally, once we have containment and source control in place, we can start moving forward with cleanup. You know, everything up until then is kind of getting the wheels in motion to achieve that containment and source control. And then after that, we, you know, after the response, you know, we get to cleanup, mitigation, and then site remediation and restoration. You know, generally the goal is to, you know, restore an area to a pre-incident condition. And, you know, with restoration, you know, we evaluate carefully, you know, what the site looked like prior to the release and prior to the incident, and then what we can do to get it back to that pre-incident condition. And earlier I mentioned the field response team, what you will call the FRT. You know, since I'm in the north part of the state, will be referred to as the NFRT, the Northern Field Response Team, or there's the Southern and Central Field Response Teams as well. You know, and our team is basically made up of 3 people in 3 positions, 3 disciplines, being a wildlife officer, environmental scientist, and an oil spill prevention specialist. At any time, we have a field response team on call. So this is a, you know, 24/7 team that responds to incidents, you know, day or night, you know, no days off, and we always have somebody assigned to this team. The wildlife officer, you know, as I mentioned, is what I am, and we follow through as the state on scene coordinator and or criminal or civil investigator. So you know, there's times where you'll get an incident, multiple wildlife officers, you know, and oftentimes, more often than not, you'll have a wildlife officer serve as a state on scene coordinator, and then you'll have other officers doing the investigations part. We've just found that it works better within the system for, you know, for the responders to deal strictly with response and cleanup, And then if we determine that investigation is also warranted, then, you know, a separate group of wildlife officers will do that in conjunction with the cleanup as that's going on. And then we have our environmental scientists. That person is aware of sensitive sites in the area, sensitive sites being anything of critical information, or anything, you know, it could be wildlife that's in the area, it could be cultural and historical resources in the area, and those things that they already have in a database that they can find that information for us quickly. So our ES can help identify what we need to protect in the area, what is sensitive, and also give share in how we do that in the types of tactics. The oil spill prevention specialist, also part of that team. We have Thomas on. He's going to provide some information on that position here shortly. So this is kind of what I just went through, our role, right? Peace officers, on-scene coordinator, criminal investigator, the peace officer side of things, right? So we do have peace officer powers. So not only can we do all the Fish and Game Code, we also do California Penal Code, you know, the vehicle code and all the other state codes. So, you know, there isn't anything generally that we couldn't follow up on in the way of, you know, peace officer duties. And the ES, right? Oh, so I'm glad this is up. The environmental unit, the ES in a response will also be the environmental unit leader. Environmental unit is generally comprised of a group of responders that are, you know, focused specifically about, you know, those sensitive sites and wildlife in the area. Now, wildlife branch director and the resources at risk, and then also what they do is the SCAT, the shoreline cleanup and assessment. So after an incident, and say all the source material has been removed, containment is gone, but there's, you know, maybe there's still residual impacts to the area. The environmental unit leader will continue to monitor and assess how restoration is occurring. And here's our OSPS. Thomas, would you like to take this?
Sure. Yeah, let me take a look at this. Get myself real quick. Yeah, so I'm an oil spill prevention specialist here in the Central. I've also worked in the Southern FRT. So the OSPS is going to be your initial site safety officer. That's going to be for the field response team on a larger incident. Within ICS, there will be a safety officer. That will not be an OSPS, but the OSPS is primarily responsible for the safety of the FRT members, and we'll do initial safety for the incident. We also will dip into the operational staff. For the majority of us OSPSs, that is our background coming from the operations side. So we will be heavily involved with the operations side of ICS. Air monitoring, we also, all the FRT members, we have air monitors on us, but primarily that would land within the OSPS's role on an incident. And then on larger scale incidences where you have a safety officer, it would be the OSPS's duty to make sure that continuous air monitoring is being done, and make sure that we're not getting any hits above levels that are set. So hazardous waste quantification, that's one of our main duties. So on spills, we're wanting to know like how much was spilled, how much was recovered, how much is lost to the environment. So the OSPS would be heavily involved with a responsible party, and then the contracting, whatever contracting companies are hired to do the spill cleanup, to track all that waste that's accumulated, and so that we can get an accurate hazardous waste quantification at the end of the spill. During salvage operations, the OSPS would be heavily involved with any contracting companies doing the salvage operation, and making sure that all the safety aspects for the state are being upheld, and also be present during any salvage operations. Then you have maritime, pipeline, subject matter experts. So here, I know for myself here in the Central, not only do I cover the coast, but it goes inland into the like Kern County, Bakersfield, McKittrick. There's plenty of pipelines throughout the state, but me personally, I deal with a lot of pipeline incidences in Bakersfield and McKittrick in that surrounding area. We work a lot with CAL FIRE, who also regulates pipelines here in California. And the causal analysis. So after everything is said and done with the spill, there will be a causal analysis done by the OSPS, gathering all the information that they've accumulated throughout the spill. And it's going to be pretty much the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And then, how can we prevent this in the future from happening again?
Great. Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah, no problem.
We just have a couple of more minutes for this section, John, so you know.
Yeah. Okay. So getting to it. So FRT. So where we fall into the unified command, the officer, OSPS, and EOL, right? So the wildlife officer is up in the unified command, while our OSPS would be with site safety, and our environmental scientist is going to be down in the environmental unit. ICS is a mandated structure for pretty much all hazmat related responses. So this type of system is created, is employed for pretty much all hazmat that's impacting, public and private resources at times. And then so notifications, right? So we've all heard of Cal OES. Most important is that you have that Cal OES spill reporting hotline posted somewhere near your workplace, and the National Response Center. So if you end up making a notification to NRC, that notification will also make it to Cal OES. This is probably one of the most important parts of the presentation. If once you have petroleum product in the water, make a report. If you have a question about it, just always default to make the report and let our response teams evaluate if it requires further response or not. So really important to drive home reporting to Cal OES and or NRC.
And that information for the team, as John probably will mention later, is part of the toolkit you are receiving that I'll be covering also later on. So you will see those phone numbers right there.
And I know I'm running short on time. So when we get on site, right, some of the first things that happen, we make our assessment as far as scope and scale of the incident. We'll call for additional resources. We'll determine what safety precautions are needed, and then establish an incident command, at least with, state, federal, and responsible party incident commanders. At the end of a incident, all right, so the emergency phase comes to an end because it has met some endpoints that we had predetermined. Those endpoints will be, determined by EUL and accepted by the unified command. And then from there it goes to, into remediation and restoration phases. And that is it for me.
All right, so this is the time for you guys to ask questions. So we just covered again the oil spill response structure, how the state has created this structure for responding to a spill. Couple of important resources that are good for you to take home, which will be highlighted in the toolkit because you will have there like everything you need. And also some of the roles from the staff from OSPR that they play on the ground or in the field. So this is the perfect opportunity for you guys to ask questions. So please go ahead and either include it in the chat or make sure that you raise your hand and we can take it from there. So let me see if there are any questions about John's presentation in terms of the structure, or everybody is okay. No questions. Everybody got everything loud and clear. All right. Okay, thank you, Robert. No problem and welcome. Any questions? Everybody is okay with all the information that was shared? No? Thumbs up? Like, can I see your thumbs up like people with the cameras? Fantastic. Okay, I don't want you guys to fall asleep because that wouldn't be good. All right, so thank you, people. That's fantastic. Thank you for the time. So we're transitioning into the second part of the presentation, which is my portion, and is related to the toolkit. Oh, sorry, I have a question here in the chat. Where can we get the OES form? And John, if you want just to respond. So when you said the OES is the form, let me ask the question. This is the question from Jesse. Jesse, are you referring to the form to capture the information to report the spill, or the OES form that gets created after a spill happens? And if you want just to,
I can address it either way. So when you call into Cal OES, they have all the, they'll have all the questions already predetermined. So they'll just do a quick interview with you over the phone. Be prepared to provide, your name and callback information, and the most information you can have in regards to the response at the moment. You can always call the hotline back and do an update, which is always encouraged, especially if you have something like a mystery sheen in the area and you say, oh, we have sheen out there, we don't know what the source is. That will kind of start the ball rolling, and that information will get to the response team. And then say later you determine you find the source as far as a boat or a fuel canister or something in the water. That's that source. You can call up the hotline and just provide an update, and that information will also be provided to the response team. That'll help us determine, if we need to make a physical response, or if it's just going to be a telephone follow-up, which happens very often. And then we might ask for, in a telephone follow-up, could you provide us some photos of what's going on now, or give us some real-time information as to what is going on and what it looks like. And then you can get on through the Cal OES website and look up the database, the spill response database. And they'll give you, when you make your notification, a number for reference. So just the Cal OES number is what they would call it. And this year it'd be a 24 for the year dash a 4-digit number. And you can use that number to go back and find the information within your report.
Thank you, John. We have one more question, and Cindy just included the access to the Cal OES reports. Wendy is asking, how can you tell by looking if a sheen is gas or diesel or oil?
You know, it really doesn't matter, you know, what it is to report it. You know, you can say you know, if you're not aware as to what it, and on my end, I don't always know either. It's generally, we need to identify what the source is prior to knowing what the product is. You know, if it's a vessel, you know, with diesel, we can say, you will know that, oh, well, it's you know, that being the source. That, you know, it's likely diesel and potentially hydraulic fluid and motor oil combined. But you could just tell them it is a sheen, and they'll ask kind of what the sheen appears to be. It could be a rainbow sheen, white sheen, opaque, or it's also started to a sheen that's starting to deteriorate will change in appearance as well. And then not only is it sheen, there's also just straight floating product and oil, like tar balls will float. Motor oil will float, you know, sometimes in the same way, and it'll just kind of float in little globs of oil. And so it's not just sheen, but, you know, things will pop up to the surface that appear differently anyways. But yeah, not real important that you know specifically what the product is.
Thank you so much, John. We have one more question. Should a person call Coast Guard as well as OES when observed? We're covering that, Jim, in a couple of the sections that I'm going to be mentioning next, so I'll respond to that one later. Any other question for John? All right. Well, John, thank you so much. And I know you're staying with us for the end of the workshop in case we get extra questions, as well as all of you.
Yep.
So thank you. And right now we're going to be focusing on one of the handouts that you received today, which is the spill response communication packet. So I want to invite all of you to check that particular handout that you received not only via email, and this morning I included in the chat. So let's go ahead and get started here. This is how the packet looks like in case you want to get oriented. And we're going to, in this section, review every component of that packet. So I want to invite you to have that packet handy. The first page of that packet has as a goal to explain to you why we created that particular communication toolkit, as well as each of the components. In addition to that, it has the information about a couple of recommended trainings we want you and your staff to review and take, which are the Incident Command System courses, the 100 and the 200. Those are great resources for you to improve your knowledge about spill response. And there are other trainings that we're going to be referring later on that are important for your staff to keep in mind, like the first responder awareness and the first responder operation trainings, depending on your role during a spill. The second page of your toolkit, and hopefully you're following the toolkit with me so you can take notes, has been created with the purpose of telling you what your first line of communication should be when there's a spill outside of your facility. I'm going to give you an example. The Orange County spill that we have a couple of years ago. If that kind of a spill happens, that is not created within your facility, is not created by your boaters, etc., but is happening outside of your facility, it is important that you have handy, and not only you, but also your staff, the following different resources. The first line of communication for each of you should be your county office of emergency services. Let's remember one of the poll questions that I asked you. Do you know who your county office of emergency services? And I think 88% of all of you said, no, sorry, I don't have a clue. Well, this is one of your first homeworks. Make sure that you use your favorite browser and you identify who your county office of emergency service is. Why is that? Is because A, they should be your first line of communication in case a spill happens outside of your facility and you need to know the status or get the latest and greatest. In addition to that, it is very important that you guys keep that information because we want you to make sure that your facility is included in the county oil spill contingency plan. So another homework is for you not only to identify your county office of emergency service contact, but also to make sure that you as a facility, Marina or Yacht Club, are included as part of the county oil spill contingency plan. Remember, there should be a dual communication, you guys talking to the county and the county talking to you. The second two items that we want you to keep in mind in case there's a spill, again, happening outside of your facility, is to check the Cal Spill Watch website. Make sure that you bookmark that and your staff also knows about that. That's part of the Office of Spill Prevention and Response. They are fantastic and very transparent and clear, providing information as long as the information is available in case of a spill. So this is a second website that in your handout is hyperlinked, so pretty easy. And the third option for you to have handy is the OSPR Twitter or X account. They are pretty active and they constantly communicate with the public about any spill as long as they have the green light to do it and they have the information available. Again, we just covered the resources that are important for you as a facility operator to have handy as well as your staff in case a spill happens outside of your facility and you want to communicate that information or get the latest and greatest. The second component of your packet, going from front to back, are the frequently asked questions about the Office of Spill Prevention and Response Equipment Grant. So a lot of you don't have any clue. That's why we're here today. These 2 pages about the frequently asked questions will respond to all the questions you will have. But later on, my colleague, Andrea, will be going over that. It tells you who can apply and basically is for any local public agency or tribe, including ports, public marinas, tribal nations, cities, counties, harbors, and probably you're thinking, Vivian, but I belong to a private marina, like Troy would say, right? What happened? Hello, Troy. Well, no worries. OSPR is pretty good about that, and Andrea will be able to tell you how you can have access to these kind of grants, right? There's always a good way to partner. That's why one of the second lessons for you today is partnerships are fantastic. Make sure that you know your neighbors, and we'll talk about that later on. These frequently asked questions also tell you about, hey, what is included in the grant, what equipment, the fact that it can be personalized depending on each of your harbors, but also the training you can get and much more. I'm not going to steal the fantastic presentation that Andrea has for all of you, but it's just for you to know that in that packet, you have everything, right? We have highlighted since the beginning of the workshop that one lesson we have learned throughout these years and by working with representatives from your industry is that in a case of a spill outside of your facility or even inside, it is extremely important that you know what your neighbors have, right? Having that sense of community is extremely important. We're not part of this like bubble where we operate by ourselves. We need to know what others have. So first of all, the first line of information for you is to know what grantees are in your area in terms of the Office of Spill Prevention and Response grant. So that information is included in your packet. Also, you can contact Andrea, and that information will be also sent in a follow-up email so you know who the current grantees are in your area. But remember that it's only grantees for OSPR. In order for you to know what other spill response equipment is in your county, second time we're mentioning, go to your county Office of Emergency Services. That's why it's so important that you get to know that contact, right? They will have a full list of all the resources. Another third resource that we want you to invite to have handy are the oil spill response organizations, or OSROs. These are organizations that respond to spill incidents that have been evaluated by OSPR. We are including in your packet, as you can see right now, the hyperlink, so you have access to that information. And all the grantees are also found in OSPR website as an Excel file, among others. Another component of your toolkit that you have handy and we are studying together is the resource phone tree for spill notification. So that's why when my friend Jim asked that question, Jim, here are the phone numbers. These 2 pages that we're giving you as a template have very important information about the required and recommended notification you need to keep in mind in case a spill happens. We recommend you that this list is updated every 6 months or once a year, that you have it in an area that is easy, accessible for you and for your entire staff, that in a moment that a spill happens and you in your facility that you need to do the notification, you're not scrambling a bunch of folders. This should be in an area very easy to access by everybody, and we're providing you the template. Here we are including the required notifications, which are the National Response Center and the State Warning Center. So those phone numbers are included there. Remember, by law, if you are the responsible party, you are required to do a notification within 30 minutes. That's what the law says. Also, we wanted to highlight the information included in the blue box in terms of not all the spills generate a fine. That's evaluated on a case-by-case basis. The important thing is that if we create the spill, we do the notification, but also if we witness a spill, it's important to do the notification. Is highly encouraged because the spill can present a threat to public health or the environment. We are also including recommended notifications, including the Coast Guard different sectors, depending on where you guys are, because this is a statewide workshop. We're including all of them. We're also including your local agency access information. Most importantly, we are highlighting the fact if you as a marina operator or harbor master or person in charge of your facility, if that day you are not on site, who's the second in command, and that information is constantly updated and easily accessible by your staff. We're also including, for example, some of you belong to a public agencies and you have a different chain of command in terms of communications. Make sure that you have handy information of the mayor office, the city and county officials, the port district members, among others. Excuse me. We're also including the fact that if you have oil wildlife in an area, we're including the phone number as well as the website. Another important information to have handy. That's why we're providing you with a template. Also, salvaging companies, divers, vessel assist, or nearby boatyards. My friends, we're providing you this template so you can update it every 6 months with your staff to a year and have it handy. In the following page of your toolkit, we took the time to include what information, when you do the reporting, would be requested from you. In order to make your life easier, and make it convenient for you, we recommend you to use this template before you do the reporting so you can capture as much information as possible, because you know this is what the agencies are going to ask you. Please include in the phone number that you're going to give as a reference when you do the reporting, your cell phone. Because if the Coast Guard or OSPR needs to follow up with you and you are on the field, of course, as you should be, it is easier for you to be reached if you do or give your cell phone. In the toolkit, we are also including the third-party claim process for both public and private entities or agencies. This information is extremely important because if you see working with the incident command system structure, OSPR can assist the state and local agencies to recover the response cost. We're including here some definitions so you get oriented in terms of that process, but we're also including for private parties. So some of you who belong to private agencies have access to that information under the National Pollution Fund Center. And the first page shows you what kind of cost items you can get recovered depending on every situation. That's why it is important that you do the proper communication when a spill happens outside of your facility. Some of those recovery costs include personal costs, as you see there, travel expenses, equipment, disposal costs, among others. Another resource for you to have handy because, again, this information was put together by input provided by some of your colleagues who join us in the workshops, in the working group, sorry. The following component of your packet is what we call a spill plan template. Remember at the beginning of the workshop, we asked you how many of you have a spill response in place, and we have a big percentage that says, no, I don't know, or I don't have one. This is a great template for you to keep handy. Let's remember that even if your facility doesn't fall under the spill control countermeasure plan that I'll be defining to you, it is important that all of you have a spill plan in place or a spill contingency plan. Why is that? I get talked to a lot of yacht clubs, and yacht clubs feel like, oh, but you know, I'm not operating like a marina. And I always ask, do you have vessels? Do you receive motorized vessels in your cruising, or you have tenants with vessels that have engines on board? Yes. So you all should have a spill contingency plan in place, even if the regulation doesn't require you to have one. If you have a fuel dock in place, these kind of plans are the ones that you file with the county or your CUPAS on an annual basis. Now, let's go back to what it says, the first paragraph. Even if your spill prevention, control, and countermeasure plan do not apply to your facility, and if you look at the bottom of that page, those are facilities that have an aggregated above ground storage capacity greater than 1,320 gallons, or completely buried greater capacity of 42,000 gallons. So if you are covered by that regulation, you have to have one spill contingency plan. But we always, as a team, recommend, regardless of what you do, always have one of those. We are including here different components of that plan. For example, steps that you need to take when the spill happened on the water or on land. If you have an on the water incident, couple of things, and these are steps that you should include as part of your plan, that's what we're giving you to you, is check the source, stop the source, identify what was a spill, and if it's gasoline, remember it's hazardous, volatile, very dangerous. You clear the area, you shut off the power, you do the reporting. That's why we're including the phone tree that you already have ready there, and then that's it. But if it's not gasoline, because of the nature, then you identify the source, you stop the source, you contain the spill. This is very important. That's why you and your staff get the proper training, including the first responder awareness and the first responder operations, that you have the protective equipment that is the appropriate for the response. And then once you have the area kind of controlled, then you can do, of course, the reporting. And that's why we included those phone numbers there. We have also included some information in case you're dealing with some bilge contaminated with diesel or transmission fluid or oil and water. And we want you to please review these type of plans with all the steps once a year. This is part of one of your staff meetings where you can review your resource boundary, your plans, among others. And it is important that you don't only have emergency plans for spills, but also for health emergency, for fires, for earthquakes. We have had conversations with a lot of the marinas or harbors or the yacht clubs where they are like, oh yeah, our spill response or emergency plan is a folder that it has 600 pages. Well, that's not going to work in the moment the emergency happens. You have to keep it simple in an area that is very accessible, that everybody knows, and the steps are very, very easy to follow. The components of those plans that you have to have in place include the site plan. Make sure that you know the valves, the pipes, the tanks, where the fuel tanks are, or the sewage pump out, or also the hydrants. In addition to that, the storm drains. If you know all of that, or you can just get access through the storm drains, for example, in your facility by contacting your city. It is important that you also have a spill response inventory list. And let me highlight this very, very loud and clear here. Make sure that you know how to open the door of that room. We have a couple of examples where people were trying to open the door and it's locked, the key doesn't work, or you don't even need the code. So everybody in the facility needs to know that. You need to have a clear inventory of what you have, quantities, description, vendors, protective equipment, and most importantly, once you use that material, which vendors can help you to properly dispose of that material as hazardous waste. If you look at the handouts that we send you, there's a handout that is entitled Recommended Resources for Oil Spill Cleanup Spill Kits for Boating Facilities, that has a list of some of the recommended items that you as a facility, even my friends with yacht clubs, should have in place. And look at the recommendation there. It is ideal to have at least 2 times the length of the largest vessel of boom to contain a spill, and even more. This is important. Make sure that you communicate with your neighboring marinas and yacht clubs and tell them, hey, this is what I have. What do you have in case we need to support each other? Then the plan also have actions, the personnel that is involved, and what kind of action each personnel needs to have. Phone numbers, as we said before. We're also including in the toolkit the fact, and I know you are all very educated public, that in California, it is illegal to use soaps or dispersant or detergents in case of a spill. So we are including that information right there. Vivian, where is this toolkit found in case I lose my handout? We're going to send you a follow-up email, as I mentioned to you before, where you will have access to the Cal Spill Watch, because thanks to the work we did as part of the working group, you guys are represented on the marinas and yacht clubs, as you see right there. So you have access to that information. We will include that there. So to wrap up my section really quickly, we want you to keep in mind that state and federal agencies in charge of responding to a spill keep in mind several factors in order to devote resources for the spill. They check what the geography, the quantity of the spill, the trajectory, among others. And in order to devote those resources, there are 3 priorities in the state. The first priority is the protection of human health. Some examples include power plant and drinking water intakes, as well as desalination plants. The second priority for the state and the federal government are the protection of natural resources like wetlands, lagoons, endangered and threatened habitats. Those two are the most important priorities for the state and the federal government because of the long-term impact and recovery, if there's any, that those resources may have. You guys, meaning boating facilities, are very important, but you are the third priority. You are economic sites. So that doesn't mean that we don't care about you. It's just because your facilities can be clean easily compared to basically other natural and human resources. Remember that prevention is the cheapest way to control pollution, that we want you guys to get to be known by your county representatives. It's a two-way communication. So make sure, that's another homework, as I mentioned already to you, not only to know your county representative, but make sure that you are included in your county oil spill contingency plan. Reach out to your neighboring facilities, tell them who you are, what resources you have, work as a team, that's very important. Review the information we share with you today. Make sure your phone trees, your plans are up to date. Keep your education improved and increasing. We want to invite you to be part of your area contingency plan. In the follow-up email, you're going to receive this afternoon after we're done with the training. We're going to send you the list of all the contingency plans. So no worries about this information. That's what I'm trying to say. These are great opportunities for you. These meetings, even though you don't need to attend every single of those, but this is great information because you get to talk to the federal, state agencies, counties, NGOs, and representatives from the industry that are involved in this kind of a structure. That information will be shared with you, so you don't need to worry. As some of my colleagues mentioned, OSPRA put together drills. If you want to participate in those drills, make sure you visit their website. I'll share with you that information later on. And let me stop here for a sec just to see if you guys have any question about what we just covered in terms of the packet before we go into a break. And I saw somebody had a question. Should a person call Coast Guard as well as OES when a spill is observed? So Jim, as I showed in the packet, the National Response Center is the Coast Guard. So those two phone numbers that I mentioned in your packet, which are the resource phone tree, those two phone numbers are there. Those are the two required phone numbers that you need to do. We also included specific sectors across the state for the Coast Guard, but once you call both phone numbers, that triggers a bunch of other communication with other state agencies. So you should call the National Response Center and the State Warning Center. Any other questions about the packet? So we have a couple of homework for you. Identify your county, make sure that you are part of the spill contingency plan, make sure your resource phone tree is updated, that your emergency plans have for different situations are located in your office where everybody knows where to go, what to do, that is simple, to the point, phone numbers updated, among others. Any questions before we go into our 10-minute break that we haven't covered? Feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat before we go into a 10-minute break. Everybody's okay? Vaj, give me your thumbs up. And Lisa and Michael and Cody, thank you, Cody. Good to see you. Mr. Hamming and David, everybody's okay? All right, Scott is doing great, having fun there. Troy and his colleagues, everybody okay? Mr. Pender, are you doing okay? Excellent, no question, that's fantastic. Great, so let's see, we're good. Fantastic, Alicia. All right, so I'm going to set up the clock for a 10-minute break starting now. So please come back and we'll continue with the workshop. Thank you guys. Please feel free to leave your camera on or off and mute yourself, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. have 4 more minutes to go, so I hope you guys are enjoying your break, and we will start in almost 4 more minutes. Okay, we have 1 more minute, so if you guys can be kind enough to start coming back to your computers. I hope you had a fantastic break. So we'll start in 50 seconds approximately. All right, welcome everybody again. We are ready to continue with our fantastic agenda that we put together for you today. And now we are going to turn the presentation over to our colleague, Thomas Delano, who is the oil spill prevention specialist. And as you can see, based on the agenda, we're going to be focusing our attention in terms of the next section, which is about case studies, lessons learned, and best practices. So Thomas, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Can
Okay.
everybody hear me?
And is Andrea going to show your presentation?
Yeah. I don't have control over it, but if you guys could go to my first slide, I believe.
Okay, perfect. So Andrea is all yours, and don't forget to share the sound. And we're going to have a very interactive, like hopefully case scenario. So hold on for a sec. We're just.
Okay, there we go. So let me introduce myself again. Hi, my name is Thomas Delano. I'm an oil spill prevention specialist with the Department of Fish and Wildlife in Central California. Today I'll be presenting a case study on a sunken vessel at a marina in Alameda, California. As the warden had said before, as a member of this Fish and Wildlife Central Field Response Team, I respond to reports of incidents that impact waters of the state alongside our game wardens and environmental scientists. By the end of this presentation, it is my hope that you feel confident in what steps are necessary to respond to a sinking or sunken vessel and the need for proactive planning and readiness. So next slide, please. I believe it should be the video.
Contractors are still here working in the dark to recover this boat that sank and to clean up that fuel. We're told that the boat holds 250 gallons of fuel and that it's unlikely all of that spilled into the marina. Still, a lot of it did, and it spread far. This video shows the moment a large boat caught fire last night in Alameda.
At about 10 p.m., we had a report of a boat fire here at the marina. Alameda Fire Department responded.
No one was hurt and the cause is unknown, but the boat did sink. It also caused diesel fuel to spill and spread throughout the marina. Liz Williams lives in a houseboat nearby.
This morning I walked out my door at about 10 in the morning and was just inundated with a fuel smell. When I looked at the water, there was a rainbow sheen all over it. I could see that fuel was just really covering most of the water.
Video from Sky 7 shows the fuel spreading from Alameda all the way to the Oakland estuary.
It is an active incident with the Coast Guard, and they're doing their best to mitigate any of the runoff, any of the flotation of petroleum products or hazardous fluids that may be on the water surface.
An inspector with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife describes the spill as minor to moderate.
What you can see on the water is kind of deceptive. A little bit of oil in water goes a long way, and it spreads out very quickly.
He said it's hard to collect this amount of fuel and that the most effective cleanup is natural evaporation. Williams feels more can and should be done.
We're in this climate change reality. It goes somewhere. It drops down into the water, it evaporates into the air. It goes somewhere. It's not like this becomes a non-event. And that's what I'm finding difficult about the explanations.
And we are told that the boat owners are cooperating and are paying for the cost of this cleanup as is required of them. The Department of Fish and Wildlife says that so far they have seen no impact on wildlife.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So what could and should have been done and by whom? So I guess I'll start off with the common causes of sunken vessels here at like marinas. Like we just saw fire. From time to time, we do get calls about boat fires, structural failures, flooding, human error, weather-related incidences. It's kind of like Murphy's Law. If, whatever bad can happen, will. So boats find all different types of ways to sink. So the immediate response actions, and, I'm kind of going off of what could and should have been done, is immediate response actions. The first and foremost that I would like to stress is safely assessing the situation and staying within your training. If there is, a boat fire going on and you are not a firefighter, nobody expects you to run inside this boat. Obviously, staying within your training and assessing the situation safely is paramount. Securing the area and always keeping safety in mind of the responders and public as well. Notifying any other, slips or boat owners that there might be a fire going on, if there's a liveaboard, letting people know to get, evacuate the area if necessary. That would be like an immediate response action. And then once the area is safely assessed and secured, I would say the next one is to notify the authorities. And we've kind of gone over a lot of those phone numbers in the handouts that were provided in the last presentation. But alert the marina management, environmental agencies who oversee environmental impact assessment and cleanup efforts, such as OSPR, but calling Cal OES would definitely notify us. Emergency responders who provide on-site support and coordinate containment measures. So we're talking about the oil spill response organizations. On OSPR's website, there is a list of all rated OSRO or oil spill response organizations, and there's several different types of ratings. There'll be terrestrial, marine, and on water. And so depending on what area of California you're in, you might have one or, up to like 5 or 6 different OSROs in your area that could respond to a spill. The company would not necessarily have to be a rated OSRO to respond to a spill, but what the responders have to be 40-hour HAZWOPER certified. All of the rated OSROs, all their personnel are 40-hour HAZWOPER certified. But other than them, maybe you need to get on the phone and call some salvage companies to assist in vessel removal and recovery operations, and then local authorities to ensure regulatory compliance and coordinate public safety measures. Next slide, please. So, okay, what do they need? The first one, information, like time, date, location. As soon as, if you're a first person to come onto a boat fire or a sinking vessel or anything, it's great to start documenting everything, like the time, date, location, the vessel name, if you can get that safely, slip number, source of the discharge, type of material discharged, and again, if you can safely discern that, estimated quantity of material discharged. So a lot of these questions, when you call NRC or OES, these are the questions that they're going to be asking you. So it's just kind of good to have these in mind and know what information, once you call, that they're going to be asking. They're also going to ask danger or threat posed by the discharge, number of injuries, if any, and weather conditions at the incident at the location. Collecting as much information that can be safely done. That's all that we ask. And again, if you don't know the type of fuel that's on board, that's okay. And they're gonna like, hey, how much do you think was discharged? And you don't do this for a living, and you can't just eyeball it. Give your best estimate. And like the warden had discussed previous, when you call, they'll give you a number, an OES number, and like he said, like it'll be 24 dash and then 4 digits. You want to hold on to that number, write that number down, document it, the time that you called, and get that number, because later on, as this progresses, you will be able to call OES back and give updates to any of the questions that they have. If, you can call back and be like, oh, we estimated that it was 100 gallons and it turns out it's 5. Yeah, you can always call OES and update any incident that you call in. What else do they need? The responders are going to need containment and mitigation equipment. Sometimes on a lot of the marinas and docks, they'll have dockside spill kits. It's good to know where they're at, what's in them, what kind of resources are available to you. Of course, when your cleanup contractor is on site, they will more than likely bring their cleanup trailers that will have absorbent pads, booms, both absorbent booms and hard boom and barriers to contain the spill. And then it's also good to reference your local area contingency plan, your ACPs, to identify sensitive sites that may be affected by the incident. Fish and Wildlife Officer, FRT, with local knowledge, will prioritize and direct emergency responders to deploy different ACP sites depending on the season. And all this will be in the ACPs for these sensitive sites. Depending on the season, these plans may require different strategies. So the local FRT that has the local knowledge, they will be directing a lot of the emergency responders and prioritizing what sites to boom off first. Next slide, please. And who will do it? So anyone can make a notification to 911, CalOES, or NRC. Once notifications are made to CalOES or NRC, Fish and Wildlife Field Response Team will be notified, and somebody from the field response team, probably the warden, but it could be the scientist or the OSPS, will contact and verify incident specifics. Other entities, government entities, might be the U.S. Coast Guard might be giving you a call, the EPA, the county certified unified program agencies, or your CUPA. They could also respond or inquire about the incident, and any other local, like county hazmat, might also be interested as well. So Fish and Wildlife Officer, FRT, will coordinate a response once contact is made. And depending on the incident, a physical response may be warranted. So emergency responders, or your OSRO, like I touched on before, will be your on-site support and coordinate containment and recovery measures. These folks are going to be doing the bulk of the heavy lifting out here. They're going to be doing the cleanup. They're going to be putting out boom to corral whatever is on the surface of the water. Maybe even doing some skimming. So they're going to be doing a lot of the work. And, so we have a couple different applied response technologies. Really, there's in situ burning. I have yet to see that ever be used, especially at a marina. Like, I don't know that would ever be used. But then we have other, our oil spill, let's see, cleanup agents, so like dispersants and surface washing agents, sorbents, solidifiers, bioremediants. So whenever the field response team is on site and directing operations from your cleanup contractor, the environmental scientist will be kind of spearheading the surface washing agents. Any kind of surface washing agent that would be used has to be approved by the environmental unit leader. And it would actually even go above her or him and go to get final approval by the administrator. So it's not like you can just pull out some Simple Green or anything and start using that. During a spill, any kind of surface washing agent has to be pre-approved before use, and not only pre-approved for the actual surface washing agent, but also how they're using it. They might want them not to use spray bottles. They might just want them having it on a rag and then to wipe on and wipe off, just really depending on the incident and the situation at hand. So there we go. Next slide, please. So here we go. So contingency plans. Having a robust contingency plan can save you a huge headache down the road. It really is a good tool to have. The best key elements of a contingency plan are going to be risk assessment, communication protocols, and resource allocation. If you can nail those three things down, then you're going to be really ahead of yourself in the event of emergency situation. Another way, after you have this plan, is to exercise the plan, simulating emergency scenarios to test response procedures and communication protocols, especially when you have some new hires and somebody that, we do this for a living, but, for people that don't do this for a living, it can be overwhelming in an emergency response. So having a robust contingency plan that is easily accessible, that all the employees know where it's at and how to access it during an emergency, could really save yourself a lot of time and effort and money, really. So by exercising these plans, you're building skills and confidence through hands-on training and drills. And you could do this, quarterly, every 6 months, once a year, just depending on your staff and how comfortable they are with it. But it would be my recommendation that you would exercise these plans frequently because, again, in a time of emergency, time is money, and you would love to save yourself a lot of that. So next slide, please. So sinking or sunken vessels, what to do when it happens to you. So immediate actions to take. Key contacts and resources are covered in the handout that you received under collective list and resources and the resource phone tree. That is something that you might want to post, like laminate it and post it in an area that everybody knows where it's at and easily accessible. Once these incidents happen, the clock has started, and you definitely want to get resources rolling out. You also need to alert Fish and Wildlife and Coast Guard and let them know. So documentation and reporting procedures. I guess document everything. Ideally on an ICS or Incident Command Systems Form 201. Those of you that have no training with ICS or don't know what I'm talking about, what that form is, ICS is a standardized approach to incident management that is used for all kinds of incidents by all types of organizations and at all levels of government. ICS is applicable to small incidences as well as large and complex ones. To state it simply, ICS is the language of a spill. Free ICS training and certification can be found on the FEMA website, and that's also found in some of the handouts that you received today. I encourage you to take a look and familiarize yourself with ICS. It will greatly benefit you during any emergency response. Next slide, please. So we have the 4 steps to spill response when a vessel sinks. Communicate, contain, control, if possible, and clean up. Okay, let's go to the next slide to communicate. Okay, so identify the risk. Pretty self-explanatory. What's causing what's causing the sheen on the water is the sunken vessel. It's the boat fire. Just identifying the risk safely. Protect yourself. Safety first. Communicate safety risks to anyone in the area or potentially responding to the incident. Make notifications. 911, get emergency personnel rolling to the site. Cal OES, there will be a record OES number, and you want to record that for future updates. And the same thing for NRC. They will give you a control number. You want to document that as well. And then, potentially call the marina, notify management that the vessel is sunk. Marine management may have resources to assist spill mitigation and cleanup. A lot of times they will have these dockside spill kits. And so alerting the management, they may have even more resources, in a warehouse, nearby. So definitely notifying the marina. And then your contracting company that you will have to hire, emergency responders who provide on-site support and coordinate containment measures. Also, maybe even potentially salvage companies to assist in vessel removal and recovery operations. From time to time, we have sinking vessels out here in Port Hueneme and Oxnard. And when that happens, a lot of times we'll have Towboat US come out and they will assess the situation, and depending on if they can or cannot, maybe get divers in the water and float the vessel back up, and then take that to a boat yard, or potentially take it to get it out of the water by trailer. Okay, so the next slide. Contain. And again, I know I'm repeating myself here a little bit, but keeping safety as your primary goal, always. If you can contain it safely, then please do so. But you want to protect unimpacted areas to reduce the threat of ignition and reduce the cost of the cleanup. The longer a spill goes uncontained, the further it's going to go, which is going to increase the cost of the cleanup. So if a boat is sinking and you can get some boom around it, that is going to save a lot of money in the future, time and money. Next slide, please. Control. Stop the release by plugging fuel vents, removing fuel, or raising vessel. Obviously, if you can get to any fuel vents and plug those safely, that could help yourself out quite a bit. Divers and salvers must consider risk of exposure versus benefit, of course. Depending on the scenario, putting a diver in the water might not be feasible. So having to, go around that, with always having safety in mind, and kind of touching on safety, OSHA regulations, to ensure safety and health working conditions for workers involved in hazardous operations. There's a few key regulations I'm going to touch on right now. The first one would be hazard communication standard. It requires proper labeling and of hazardous materials, safety data sheets, and worker training. Number two would be personal protective equipment, PPE. Mandates proper PPE such as gloves, helmets, goggles, protective clothing to minimize exposure to hazards. Confined space standards addresses the safety requirements for working in confined spaces, including proper ventilation, monitoring for hazardous gases, and emergency rescue protocols. HAZWOPER, or Hazardous Waste Operations and Emergency Response, which is HAZWOPER. It provides guidelines for workers responding to hazardous substances releases, emergency response plans, and decontamination procedures. And like I said before, any kind of contractor that you would hire to do the cleanup would have to have a 40-hour HAZWOPER certification. Respiratory protection standards ensure the provisions and use of respirators when necessary to protect workers from inhalation and hazardous substances. Depending on the incident, respirators might be necessary. And then maritime standards, including specific regulations for maritime activities, such as diving operation and vessel salvage and hazardous materials handling. So as an OSPS on an incident, like I said before, We are handling a lot of the safety for the field response team. In larger incidences, there will be a safety officer who we will coordinate with. And a lot of the contracting companies will bring their own safety as well. So having all these folks out here, having safety in mind, first and foremost, is always going to be paramount to any response. So always knowing that and keeping that in mind can help yourself out on an incident. Next step, please, or next slide. So cleanup. We have dewatering, or pumping out water from vessel while ensuring that discharged water is contained. And by contained, meaning it could be as simply as having it boomed off, and whatever discharged water is coming out is captured inside that boom, and that we're not creating even more of a mess. Any dewatering operations that would go on would be overseen by the FRT as well. None of this should be going on without the field response team's presence, or maybe the Coast Guard as well. They might want to observe that. So they'll also use the use of oil water separators if necessary to handle oily water mixtures. Don't see that quite as much, but maybe in the larger spills that could also be used. That's an asset that is not commonly used, but it is available with some of the contracting companies. Damage control and repairs. Assess and repair any structural damage to the vessel to prevent any further sinking or leakage. And then the use of patches and other temporary fixes to stabilize the vessel until permanent repairs can be made. Like I said before, I've seen before where a vessel assist will come in, get some divers in the water, and then they can make a patch to the hull and float the vessel, dewater it, and then get it towed either to a trailer or to a boat yard where it can be pulled out, and then the permanent fixes can be made. Next, we have decontamination. Cleaning the affected areas and equipment to remove any residual oil or hazardous substances. The use approved cleaning agents and techniques to minimize environmental impacts. And again, the environmental unit leader will be overseeing any kind of cleaning agents and what techniques need to be used during the cleanup. And then follow protocols for personal decontamination to ensure the safety of response personnel. So next slide, please. Okay. Vessel considerations. A lot of different vessels out there, a lot of different vessel thinking. So evaluate vessel stability and structural integrity before and during the response operations. Just because the vessel seems, maybe it's, only sunk halfway, and when you first discover it, it's going to be an ongoing evaluation of the stability and structural integrity. Plenty of times, when you get there, things seem to be going all right, but as the day progresses, it could get a lot worse, and then it could become a safety issue for the responders. So constantly evaluating vessel stability and structural integrity, that's something that is a must. Considering the vessel size, type, and cargo in planning response and cleanup efforts. So sometimes when a vessel is sinking, might not have a lot of fuel on board, but they might have other cargo on board that could be of interest to the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Coast Guard and EPA as well. So having a good understanding on these vessels by contacting the owner and getting as much information as possible, that's great. And then coordinate with salvage experts for the safe and efficient removal of the vessel from the marina. And again, keyword there, safe and efficient. Next slide, please. And so here, waste management, right in my wheelhouse, what I deal with quite a bit, to ensure proper and legal disposal of all waste materials generated during the response and cleanup. So when the OSPS is on scene, they will get with a responsible party, and more than likely it'll be the warden being the state on-scene coordinator. And so that will be the unified command. And if the Coast Guard is involved, they will be the federal on-scene coordinator. So what we have here is the responsible party, the state, and the federal on-scene coordinators all coordinating a response. Some of the plans developed during this response will be a waste management plan. And that is truly to ensure proper and legal disposal of all waste. So that's not just what comes, what came out of the tank. It's what was recovered. It's the PPE that was, oiled, or, anything that it touches needs to be disposed of properly, and adhere to EPA and local laws governing the disposal of hazardous and non-hazardous waste. So developing a waste management plan with your oil spill prevention specialist, and agreeing to the parameters and following through with those, and engaging with a qualified contractor to handle waste disposal operations. So that's not just them collecting it, it's also them storing it, potentially on site, and maybe 20-yard roll-off bins or frac tanks. And then once the spill is ended, then transporting those to a licensed disposal facility. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Thomas, for this great information and the case scenarios that are one of the key components of these workshops. We have a question in the chat that I'm going to start with that one for you.
Okay.
It's from David Beatty. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name. Does California Specialized Training Institute hazardous materials training, for example, the 24 Industrial Technician and First Responder Operations, FRO 16 hours, collectively 40 hours training, meet the same border and 40-hour HAZWOPER for oil spills response in California?
So there's another training. You're asking if another training is equal to the 40-hour HAZWOPER?
David, if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question directly, just to clarify. That would be
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
So hang on a second. I got to mute something there. So in California, I'm a CSTI instructor, which is California Specialized Training Institute, and we operate under Cal OES to teach industry, hazmat, and it's used by law enforcement for the FRA level, and it's the same training that firefighters and everybody go through, but it's distilled down more for industry. And we've consistently used that to meet the burden of the 40-hour HAZWOPER requirement for spill response in the state of California. And I noticed that, as a state employee, you were referring more to the federal 40-hour HAZWOPER training as the requirement, and brought up no reference to the California hazardous materials training. And I was wondering, one, are you aware of it? And two, does it meet the burden of HAZWOPER for doing this sort of work?
I wish I had a better
Did that come through okay?
I don't know. Yeah, because I've only been made aware of the 40-hour HAZWOPER, and typically that's what we check for. When
Yeah, David.
Hello?
Yeah, David, we're hearing you, and you're getting responded to your question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries. Go ahead, Thomas. Sorry.
Yeah, so I've only been checking for the 40-hour HAZWOPER certifications in my experiences on spills. I wasn't aware of any supplemental certification that would equate over to a, or supplement that. I would be happy to look into it and get back to you if that works, because it sounds like, that you guys are doing that. And if it does, I would love to relay that to my counterparts throughout the state, because that could be a whole new crop of responders.
Well, CSTI is better connected to Cal OES than the federal program and the HAZWOPER program.
And
Yeah.
David, have you had that experience in terms of
Oops.
your training?
The hell.
David, can you hear us? Seems he's having some issues. So while he's back, any other questions? While David is back? Anything about the case scenarios? Or any comments about the information that was presented before we go into the grants? Everybody's okay, no questions, you have learned everything okay? Okay, thank you, Troy, for giving us the heads up there. No, David, thank you. All right, so it seems that we don't have these questions at this point, and I wanted to highlight to all of you, we are recording this session. And thank you, Alicia. She's saying very helpful, and those pictures of a spill are always great. We're going to send you a follow-up email with all the resources we're discussing today, and also tomorrow or later on the link to the recording, of course. Thank you, Stephen, saying lots to learn before we jump into Andrea's presentation. And also, we're going to send you the link to all the documents that we have been referring to. So now we're going to go to the last presentation of the day, which is very important. It's from my colleague, Andrea Moore, and she will be talking about the OSPR Spill Response Equipment Grant. So Andrea, take it from here.
Hi, looks like we've crossed the plane of morning to afternoon. So good afternoon. I'm going to turn off my camera so that I have better connection and start the presentation for you. So it looked like in the poll that Vivian ran earlier that about 20% of you were familiar with our Response Equipment Grant Program. That's excellent. I'm glad to hear that. Hopefully the rest of you are going to learn a lot about this, and maybe even for those of you that are familiar, maybe you'll hear something new that you didn't know about our program. And so I am, again, as Vivian said, I'm Andrea Moore. I'm one of our local government grants coordinators here with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's Office of Spill Prevention and Response. And I want to talk to you today about our Response Equipment Grant Program. And this program uses existing funding that was developed from an assembly bill back in 2008 that expanded current law to include local assistance funding. And that allowed Cindy Murphy, our other local government grants coordinator, to create this program that offered these funds to have these response trailers that are pre-staged equipment trailers that help us deal with the immediate needs of an oil spill. And so these are staged throughout the state, adjacent to waters of the state, and they are offered to counties and cities, port districts, harbors and marinas, fire departments, and California Native American tribes, public utility districts, emergency management departments throughout the state. So of course, these are local government entities or Native American tribes adjacent to waters of the state. Now, Vivian mentioned some of you may be private entities and interested in a grant. And if that's the case and you're interested, then we would encourage you to partner with one of your local entities there that I mentioned. So a county or city department, one of your fire departments there locally, or one of your public utility districts or emergency management department, and get together with them and look into applying for one of the grants to help cover your local area there. So how do we rate your application and whether or not you're a good candidate for one of our grant trailers? And what we do is we use a system of rating criteria. Are you near waters of the state? And do you have economic sites to protect? Are you in close proximity to other response resources? How far away are you from other types of is there another grant trailer in your area? Are you close to an oil spill response organization? So if you're a great distance away from one of those trailers or from an oil spill response organization, then you'd probably be a good candidate. If you have streams or a harbor or a lake nearby, or you have a particular, if you have a harbor with economic sites of interest, right, that would be, you'd be a likely candidate. Your availability, your willingness to share that resource with other entities in your area, and keeping that availability to OSPR. If OSPR were to reach out to you and say, hey, we need to use your trailer, there's been a spill up the highway, we want to come grab it, and your willingness to use that and to share that with us is one of the things that we look at when we rate your ability to have a trailer in your location. And so, of course, we look at your ability to deploy the equipment. Does your local government entity, does your harbor, does your marina have enough staff? Do you have enough personnel to deploy the equipment? Do you need or have a boat? Are you mainly deploying to streams, in which case perhaps you don't need a boat, but you do need enough personnel to be able to walk down the boom into the area, or maybe the water gate device? So you would need enough staff to do that. But if you have a harbor or marina and you're going to be deploying boom into that area, you would likely need a boat to do that. So do you have access to that type of equipment to deploy the boom? And then maintaining the trailer. Do you have the funding to do that? It's an ongoing requirement that you be able to maintain a grant trailer if you are awarded one. Can you replace tires? Can you maintain the registration? That becomes the responsibility of the grantee. So those are the rating criteria that we sit down and talk with you when you've applied for a trailer. Those are the things that we discuss when we rate whether or not a local government entity is, or a tribal nation is, a good candidate for a trailer. So the funding, we mentioned that this funding came from an Assembly bill extension back in 2008. And these original grant trailers started out as kind of a one-size-fits-all. The equipment was very standard. It wasn't like it is today. So original grants topped out at $25,000, and now in 2024, trailers are more customized based on the needs of the marina or harbor or waterway, and the grants are now potentially funded up to $45,000. And like I said, instead of being kind of a one-size-fits-all where the equipment was established, we just filled it with what came with the trailer. Now grantees are able to pick what works best for them in the trailer. And we sit down and we discuss what type of boom that might work best for them, whether or not they need navigational lights for night booming, whether they need a generator, type of absorbance that they might need, whether or not they have streams or small water beds that they might use a water gate for. So it's much more customized. And then of course our funding sources have gone up, and so we are able to have that $45,000 maximum grant amount, which is wonderful. So it is a one-page grant application. I don't know how many of you have filled out other grant applications, but that is an incredibly small, short, concise grant application. So we're really pleased to offer such a short easy grant application. We try to fund about 3 to 4 grants a year, but that's based on our available funding each year. And we do have 80 plus response equipment trailers throughout the state, and we are hoping that number grows. Cindy Murphy works with our tribal nations throughout the state, and we're hoping to, that's a separate program where she offers trailers to the tribal nations and trains them. So we are hoping to continue to offer these grant trailers to different resources throughout the state. So we do hope that 80 plus number continues to grow. So what comes in your trailer? The trailer, of course, itself, the containment, it's a cargo trailer. It comes in 2 different sizes depending on your location and how you can store it or what types of equipment that you're putting in the trailer. You can get 1,000 feet of boom. If you're doing more like small stream beds or streams, you can get a water gate, which is like an underflow dam, as you can see in that picture in the upper right-hand corner. Those navigational lights, which you would put on your boom for, nighttime, so that your bass boats aren't flying over your boom in the middle of the night. And anchors and buoys, and your anchors, like a Danforth anchor, like you see there in your left-hand corner. You might get a toolbox, your protective equipment, your PPE, or a generator. You might get, of course, you're going to get your marinas and yachts toolkit. As Vivian mentioned, we're going to give you a copy of that to go in your trailer. That's very useful for you to have there at your harbors and yacht clubs and your marinas. And then we are going to provide you with some OES booklets that has all of your reporting resources. You're going to get some sorbents, as you see in your lower left-hand corner. And so these are the types of things that we would fill your trailer with. So when you get your trailer delivered, what comes with your trailer? We're going to provide you with an 8-hour course to train you on what comes inside the trailer, how to use the equipment that's in the trailer. We're going to familiarize you with all the things and how to use them. We're going to provide you, one of our oil spill prevention specialists is going to provide you with health and safety surrounding the equipment in the trailer and how to use it, how to deploy it, how to be safe around the equipment and around the water. And we're going to go through an actual hands-on deployment session. That's where we're going to train your staff on the actual deployment of the equipment. And then how to properly restore the equipment, put it back in the trailer. And then, of course, like fire hose, if it gets wet, you don't want to put it away wet. So how to properly maintain the equipment, make sure it dries out when you're storing it so that you can keep the equipment for a long time. So that's what when you first get the trailer. We also offer continuing support here at the Office of Spill Prevention and Response. Throughout the year, we reach out to our grantees who have trailers throughout the state, and we offer refresher training so that as the staff turns over, maybe at your marina, you've had new staff in the last year or two since you've received your trailer, or maybe it's been a while since your staff has received training on how to deploy the equipment, or maybe you've forgotten what's in the trailer, and it's a good time to get trained on what's in there and how to use it. Contact me and let's set up a time to come out and have one of our oil spill prevention specialists go over that trailer with you and what's in there, and we'll do another health and safety training, and we'll do another boom deployment so that you can re-familiarize yourself with your trailer and your equipment and what it's capable of. So those are the boom refresher trainings, and we offer those. So if you haven't received an email from me about boom refresher training and you have an oil spill response trailer, reach out to me and we would offer you that training. And so that's one of the things that we do to offer continuing support. The other thing that we do is, although the trailer is owned by the grantee and all the contents in the trailer are the responsibility of the grantee, it's their job to maintain it, replace tires, keep up their registration, replace any contents as they get worn out or used. on occasion, when there are available funds through the state of California, we are sometimes able to offer small grant amount to help grantees replenish some of their equipment. So perhaps they need to replace 5 feet of boom, or maybe they need to replace some of their sorbents. Perhaps they had a sunken vessel and they used some of their sorbents and they need to replace that. Maybe some of their navigational lights have broken and they need to replace those. Sometimes in the end of the year, we have available funds and we can offer some replenish grant, and maybe up to $1,500, maybe $2,000, and we can offer some of these grants to help replenish some of your equipment in your trailer. So if there's available funds, we can offer you these grants as well. So although it is your job to maintain the trailer throughout the year and keep up on the maintenance and replenishing the equipment inside, on occasion we have available funds and we can offer these replenish grants in support of our grantee. And that's it. If anybody has any questions of either myself on the grants or Thomas or John.
Thank you, Andrea. You got one question, but as usual, immediately you cover the question, information about like what kind of materials are included in the trailer, so you properly cover that information. And while people are thinking about your questions, don't forget about writing all these contact information. As I mentioned to you already, you're going to receive in your inbox after we're done a very detailed email with all the speakers' contact information, location of the handouts, among other of the resources that we have mentioned today, including a couple that you requested. So we'll be including that information right there. So any questions for, first of all, Andrea? She clearly mentioned that it is fantastic to know that even though it's mainly focused on public agencies, Osprey is super supportive of even private agencies or organizations. So you can find a way to work with your local city, county, etc., to make sure that you have the opportunity to apply. And they have done that thanks to these workshops many, many times. So please reach out to Andrea again. You will find that information there. And then Davis, if you are interested in a refresher training, please make sure that you contact Andrea. That information will be included in your email that you're going to receive as a follow-up. All right. Any questions? Yeah, Robert, go ahead.
I have a question for Andrea. My operation with the Coast Guard Auxiliary is close to the Channel Islands, and the Santa Cruz portion of Santa Cruz Island is managed by the National Park Service. I would like to contact them and see if they have a spill response program. I have a feeling it is not, because I've been to the island with the National Park Service many times and I haven't seen it. But I was thinking now they could use a trailer at Scorpion area because it's visited by other vessels, and if any, it's a national marine sanctuary. So especially there, it should be protected. So I will check with the National Park Service, and may I contact you then, Andrea, and see if
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Reach out to them, and if they don't have a trailer and they're interested in working with you together on applying for one, then yes.
Super. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. And there was one of our participants
Oh,
today.
I'm sorry. I'm unfortunately a state, they do not qualify. So we would have to, it has to be a local government entity, not a state park.
It's a national park, what,
Oh,
Robert?
not a
It's a-
national park. Sorry, not a national park. It has to be a local government.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that, Robert. I'm still learning my job, so thank you for your patience.
No, that's good. And Robert, if you feel, because Andrea, Robert is super connected.
So Robert, we can find another entity nearby to work with. So reach out to me, some other local government that might be willing to work with you. So go ahead and email me and let's work together and we can get on the phone and talk about it, okay?
Okay, thanks again. I will do
Yeah,
that.
you bet. Thanks for the
So-
question. That was great.
There are two questions in the chat. One is what agency has authority for Lake Berryessa's water? That's Solano County, Morgan. And David is asking you, Andrea, is there any cost related to the refresher training? They have one of your trailers.
No, it's completely free. Refresher training's free. Send me an email and we can set up a time to get together and find a time that works best for you and for one of our oil spill prevention specialists to come out and do a training for you. It takes about 4 hours at the most if you have up to 15 people. If there's more than 15 people, we can set up maybe a morning session and an afternoon session, but it takes about 4 hours to do the refresher training. And it's completely free.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Andrea, would you mind stop sharing the screen so we can see, thank you, the entire group, to see if there are any questions, any heartburns, anything that we can help you with about the workshop and what we covered. And again, just to think about, thank you, Robert, about the questions that we asked you before the workshop started, and now we provide you with the tools and the resources to respond to these questions. So we kind of try to do it before education, after education, couple of the action items, reach out to your county, identify your county Office of Spill Prevention, and your county contact. Also make sure reach out to your neighboring facilities to know what they have, what you can offer to them, and vice versa. Review your phone tree, review your emergency and spill response contingency plans, and also make sure too that you review the links to the resources we're going to send you. I know it's a lot of information, but if you have any follow-up questions, that email will be having all the contacts, and we can continue to work with you. I don't see questions, but I will include one thing that is very important for us, which is our evaluation form. And I want to, now that I have your attention that is being captured, if you can take 2 minutes of your time to please help us filling that out. We want one evaluation form for every participant. So I know a lot of the marinas had other staff, as we heard at the beginning of the training or the workshop. I'm expecting to have, based on the count, approximately 53 evaluation forms from you guys. Hopefully today. If not, I'll send you an email reminder probably next week with the recording. And we'll stay here for a couple of more minutes in case you guys have any questions. I know it's lunchtime and probably you're saying, I don't have any question because everything was clear. Hopefully that was the point. Or let us know if you have any questions. Anything you want us to clear or respond, we're here. Wow, a quiet group today. Probably it's because it's the summer solstice, right?
Well, can I just say that it was a very informative program, Vivian, and it's well presented. And I thank you for doing this. You're great.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert, as usual, for your help and support. And the Coast Guard Auxiliary is usually well represented here with many of your members. And we got a couple of questions. Jimmy's asking, which is a question that we have the response. Do any OSPR groups use volunteers to look for oil wildlife after a spill? So I don't know, either Andrea or Cindy, if you want to.
I can answer that. Yeah, so we don't use volunteers to look for oiled wildlife because oiled wildlife is a very specific thing, and we only want to use pre-trained volunteers for that through the Oiled Wildlife Care Network. Those are volunteers who are trained specifically to work with oiled wildlife. So yeah, we do use volunteers in oil spill response, but not to look for oiled wildlife. If volunteers do see oiled wildlife, we ask them to contact the Oiled Wildlife Network.
This is Cindy. We do in San Diego have volunteers that look for oiled wildlife, but I've only seen it in the last 2 years. There was 3 years. There was a big fire. There was a big fire on the water in Point Loma in 2021. There was a tremendous diesel spill as a result. It was a huge story. You could actually look it up in the news and see it. And there was a lot of wildlife that was oiled. And since then, I see more volunteers actively looking. Before that, not so much. Oh, and also, although sometimes during COVID, because I think people were bored and they were walking along the shoreline because they had nothing else really to do.
Yeah, I don't know if Andrea or Cindy, you wanted to comment, but it's important for people to remember that, you know, dealing with oil is not very safe and people take it for granted and think, oh,
True.
this is the way to
True.
go to give back. That, let me highlight many times, and Andrea and Cindy, who are the experts here, can even back me up. We want to
Cindy.
highlight the fact that you need to have a training. You can create a disruption in
Very
the
true.
Cindy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, thank you, Vivian. And thank you for the question. That's a great question. So as far as just looking for oiled wildlife, you have the wildlife reporting number. If you're out on the shoreline and you think you see an animal that potentially might be oiled, I would say make that phone call. Call the old WCN wildlife hotline and say, this is where I'm located. Here's my contact information. It appears to be, if you know the species, wonderful. If you have a lat long on your phone, that's even better. Again, you don't always know if they're actually oiled, but that's just good to report it. I think what Andrea was saying too was that we don't want non-trained people to try to collect wildlife, right? That is a specialized skill and you have to go through specialized training. But if you're out and about and you think you see an oiled wildlife, by all means, call the wildlife hotline number and report it. Just don't go try to capture the animal because that we want to leave for our trained professionals. So thank you for the question. Great question.
Let's see. I don't see any more questions at this point. Again, it's 12:30, right on time. Thank you everybody for your time. Wait for our follow-up email. Remember, one evaluation form per participant, and any follow-up questions you may have, please utilize the contact information we're going to be including from all the speakers in the email. And remember, use us as resources. Even if you have a future question that you think is silly, if you have a question, it's because you need a response, and that's why we're here to help you to, you know, respond to any of the questions you have. So thank you again so much for your time and participation, and have a great summer, clean boating, you know, experience for all the facilities as well. And okay, thank you for your participation, and we'll stop recording here and have a great afternoon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Vivian.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.